What is a leader on a mission? A leader on a mission is someone dedicated to providing accessible legal support to underrepresented founders. Welcome to another inspiring episode of Meaningful Work, Meaningful Life podcast, the show that empowers you to redefine the life you want and live your best life right now. I'm your host, Francine Belly, and in this season 10, we are delving into the theme of leaders on a mission, where we explore the personal journeys, impactful work of visionary leaders who are making a difference in the world. And today, I am delighted to talk with Aravinda Seshadri, the founding partner of Venturous Counsel, a law firm dedicated to supporting underrepresented and marginalized founders in the tech industry. Aravinda's work goes beyond traditional legal services. She actively mentors, educates, and supports founders from marginalized communities, helping them from navigating complex legal landscape and succeed in their entrepreneurial endeavors. In our chat, Aravinda shares her journey from dreaming of becoming a courtroom lawyer to becoming a champion for diverse entrepreneurs. We delve into the challenges faced by these founders and the huge relief it can be not to worry about the legal aspect of running a startup. What makes Aravinda truly a leader on a mission is her unwavering commitment to social justice and her innovative approach to providing accessible legal support. She's not just about giving legal services, she's about unlocking potential and empowering founders to succeed against the odds. You'll hear Aravinda insights also on networking, mindset, and finding purpose in work. So her passion, wisdom, and actionable advice will inspire you to pursue your own meaningful work and make a lasting impact. So let's dive in right now. Welcome, Aravinda.
Thank you so much, Francine. First of all, just mad props for putting this out there into the world. I've already listened to some episodes and yeah, just love what you're doing and what you're shining a light on. And what we pay attention to is so important. And, directing attention towards examples that are inspiring and with the wisdom they have to share in this area, I think it's just a net benefit for the world. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Aravinda. Soul, when I also, met you a year ago on this call with InPig, I just resonated also with what you did, what you're doing. So, yeah, so here we go. So we're going to share quite a lot. So tell me about your background and what you did want to do when you grew up. When you were a kid, what were you thinking about?
Yeah, that's a hard one. Actually, it's funny. I did think I would be a lawyer, but I thought I
Oh,
would be a different type of lawyer,
okay.
like a courtroom trial, dramatic, all the movies, like A Few Good Men or My Cousin Vinny. I love those movies. Where it was like dramatic courtroom, like you just sway someone with the persuasiveness of your argument.
Mhm.
Um, and then when I got to law school, I realized that's like 99% just like grind and like paperwork. And then maybe some categories have 1% of like trial exposure and experience.
Okay.
So I didn't think that was for me. Actually, my journey was a little chaotic.
Mm.
I went to NYU for undergrad, partly because they were on the Common Application. This is back in the day when you had to like type in a typewriter. You're like, I know I'm dating myself so bad here, but seriously, you had to like type in and for the Common Application, you could just copy it once you'd done the main part and then just have separate essays. And so I applied to NYU based on that. I got in and I actually was like, well, this is really interesting. Um, so I studied linguistics, psychology, philosophy for undergrad because I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I was like, let's just cast a wide net.
Mhm.
And even some computer science, which my
Ah,
Indian parents made me. And I
interesting.
was like, I I cannot do this for my life. This would kill me. I
I
can't do
did
it.
do computer science actually myself. That was
Yeah.
my first degree.
What
Interesting.
did you think about it?
Oh, I loved it, you know. And
You loved
actually,
it.
the funniest thing is that my dad was diplomat and he was in law, and I didn't want to do law because he was in there, and then I just
Yeah.
chose something else.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, my parents, my dad was in sciences, my mom was in education, but
Mhm,
they're both pretty educated immigrants from India.
mhm.
But yeah, they definitely like honestly, they wanted me to be a doctor. So they're like, okay, we'll settle for lawyer. Like it's kind of funny. Um, but they were, they were pretty supportive. So then I actually ended up getting into Stanford Law School, which I was really excited about.
Mhm.
And when I was there, I realized I wanted to work with startups because we're in the Bay Area. That's
Okay.
what's around us. That's the exciting thing. And when I graduated, I joined a big law firm that had, some notable startups on the roster. But
Mhm.
I pretty quickly realized that they're set up to do a very good job for larger companies that have a lot of money.
Yeah.
And the earlier stage, startups, even early investors, I, as a junior associate, was on an M&A, an IPO, financing, all at the same time. I have more than 70 startup clients where I'm one of the only people who will reply to their emails.
Mm.
So I just didn't have the time, the experience, or the resources to do a good job for the smaller clients. So it just felt kind of demoralizing.
Mhm.
So I had a colleague who felt very similarly. He started a boutique law firm. I joined as one of the first attorneys there. I was there for 8 years. I was a partner for the last 5 years. And I'd always cared a lot about diversity. So I was president of all these alphabet groups in undergrad and law
Mhm.
school, affinity groups for diverse community building. And as a partner, I really did my best to recruit, mentor, and retain a very diverse team.
Mhm.
When I left that law firm, it was one of the most diverse practices in corporate law that I had encountered.
Wow.
So I felt good about that.
Awesome. Yeah.
But I also wanted to give back to the community.
Mm.
So I did these free workshops and trainings on like what is dilution or what is debt versus equity, or just some of these topics where if you're around other founders all day, you can get some of the answers. You kind of in get by osmosis some of the context. But if you're the first person in your community on this journey, it's very alienating and
Yeah.
bewildering. So I was like, this will be great for our own clients. I looked around and I was like, where are they?
Where are they?
What happened? And I knew it wasn't that they didn't exist. So I
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
100% I knew that was BS.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I just didn't understand why such a diverse firm wasn't attracting diverse clients. So I had
Mm.
to take a step back and I realized that as a boutique law firm, we don't really have a marketing budget or we don't do a lot of outreach.
Mm.
It's really based on word of mouth and uh that's how we're able to be lean, mean, keep the prices low, be efficient. That's like the hallmark of boutique law firm.
Mhm.
So if you if you didn't know about us already,
Yeah.
you wouldn't
You.
know that
Yeah.
we were a
Exactly.
resource.
Yeah.
And on top of that, if you reached out and you just heard about us in the community, but you weren't like in the network, you weren't referred by an existing or prior client,
Yeah.
and we were busy, which we often were, we'd always prioritize the referral.
Of course.
So it's just
Yes.
more of a known
Of course.
quantity,
Yeah.
just
Exactly.
feels safer.
Mhm.
Right. So I
Mhm.
realized every single boutique law firm is doing the same thing.
Mhm.
And the end result, not out of malice or ill intent, but it ends up
Mhm.
resulting in the people who are not in network, which
Mhm.
tend to be
Yeah.
disproportionately underrepresented folks, they
Totally.
don't get access to good legal. They end up with the big law firm with somebody super junior who doesn't have resources, doesn't have time for you, and is also very expensive.
Mm.
Or they're working with somebody who doesn't know about startup law and is like making mistakes all over the place, and they only find out a little too late.
Mhm.
So that was the seed. That was what started the path to creating this law firm, which I did 5 years ago,
Mhm.
specifically intentionally outreaching and dedicating ourselves to working with underrepresented founders, investors, and mission driven, values aligned companies.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's a mission driven law firm too means that we can give advice in a way that feels really good. Like I tell clients all the time, please don't waste legal spend on this. This is a waste of money. At a
Mm.
big law firm, I can't even say that. That's undercutting the bottom line of the law firm. Um, or I've told 3 of my clients, it's about time for you guys to look for in-house counsel. words that a law firm partner may never have said before in their lives, right?
Yeah.
Like that's 100% you're going to make less money that way.
Yeah.
But our goal is different. Our goal is to
Mhm.
support more underrepresented founders so they can be successful. And the way that I describe it is there's this section of every founder and investor's brain that I know that is just freaking out low key about legal at all times, like a broken smoke detector just
Yeah.
screaming in your ear. And it's very distracting and loud, but you don't know how to turn it off. You took the batteries out, it's still making noise. What are you supposed to do? If you can give that screaming mess to somebody that you trust,
Mm.
obviously you're covered on legal, that's important. I would argue almost equally or more important is the amount of mental capacity that you unlock by not having to worry about the legal, not worrying about, am I even worried about the right things? Not worried about, should I even ask my legal counsel because they're so expensive
Yeah.
and tone deaf that it's going to cost thousands of dollars to get back something that is not actually that useful. If you can free up that part of your mental load, you can do more of what you're great at. And that's what our firm's here for and about. It's supporting and connecting founders and investors with the resources that will allow them to go to the next level.
Wow, what a story, my gosh. And you know what you just say resonated so much with my own background as well, coming from different type of background, including investment banking as well, where you recruit people from the network, right? So if you don't
Mhm.
know people who are already within this banking sector, obviously you keep recruiting the same and the same. And then also in the tech industry, the same thing, unless you do a specific outreach. And I also was working with a firm, actually, American firm, where we actually outreach to women and African women in the diaspora specifically, because when we started to do one type of program where we just advertised that broadly, only men turned up. So there were like
Right.
very little women. I thought, no, I know that women are also
You know, they're out there.
individual and are
You know, they're
also
out there.
understanding, right?
Yeah.
But we need to do specific outreach for them to think that, oh, this is for me as well, right? So what you just say, I totally, totally get it. And as you say, the business model of all those large firm, big consultancies is about yes, getting those big checks, right? So not telling their small clients that, yeah, no, you don't need to do this. Their whole business model is to just bill, 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 bill. So this is a totally, totally different paradigm. And one of the person actually interviewed here for this season, I don't know if you know him, Chris Marquez. He wrote a book called The Profiteers. So if you have got
Mm,
some time, read that. Actually, that was an eye opener. How actually a lot of big company externalize their, bad behavior onto other people, and then they
mm.
profit for every single thing, and then they externalize the cost, and they get all the profit, the profit, the profit, the profit. So this
Yeah.
can't be
Yeah.
sustainable, right? So, I hope that there are a lot of firms, law firms like yours who are actually,
Ah, absolutely not. There are
oh,
not many at all.
oh my
I
God.
definitely, people told me I was crazy when I was
Yeah.
like, I'm going to limit the pool of potential clients. But they're getting, there's more and more. And I do
Yeah,
feel like,
getting there. Yes.
as you've explored in your podcast, COVID and,
Mhm.
sort of the resignation and
Resignation,
quiet quitting,
exact.
all of this is a reflection of people, I hope, to some extent, is a reflection of people looking inward, thinking about what the purpose, what motivates them, what they want to do, what kind of difference they want to make in the world, and choosing accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
So I view that actually as potentially a positive. Um, and I'm hopeful that people are looking into that and pursuing that. And I love what you're doing of
Yes,
amplifying those messages
yes,
and
yes,
stories to
yes.
encourage people on that path because it's not an easy path,
It's
but so
not.
rewarding.
It's not. Thank you very much. It's not, because even as you can also think that you may be aware that at the moment there's quite a lot of backlash when even it comes to DNI and ESG and
Yep.
all those things, right? So when
Yeah. Yeah.
we actually had the hope that actually this is going to start being normalized, now we are going back again. So you never know how we're going to move forward even faster, right?
Yeah. But I do think it's like the backlash is like extinction fear, and
Yeah,
it's like, two steps forward, one step back doesn't mean we're not moving in the right direction.
that's
I'm
true.
hopeful anyway that that's
Yeah,
the case.
yeah.
And it can be hard to be hopeful in these times, but I do really feel like feeling despair is reasonable and normal and appropriate response.
Mm-hmm.
And giving into despair and letting it turn into apathy is like letting them win.
Yeah, yeah,
It's that's the opposite. And so that's why I really applaud what the work you're doing to help motivate people, because that's
yeah.
what we need right now.
Oh, thank you, thank you. So tell me, Aravinda, what is one thing that most people don't know about you?
So most people do know I have two kids. I have an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old. So the 3-year-old was straight up COVID baby. Like nobody was in the hospital with me. It
Oh
was
my
it was rough.
gosh.
Uh yeah, but I guess I am really into I read a lot of fantasy and sci-fi. I love audiobooks, and I love crafty, like crochet. We
Oh,
just so for our remote team, it's fully remote to keep the cost down for the clients and so we
yeah.
can hire the best talent.
Oh,
We do monthly events, and we just did, I'm probably going to butcher it, suminagashi, which is a Japanese, like
uh-huh,
you put ink onto water
uh-huh.
and the fluid dynamics makes a very unique pattern each time. And then you
Ah,
print it onto something. And it's like very peaceful and very cool. And like I
oh.
introduced it to my 8-year-old and she loved it. And so I love all sorts of crafty um projects.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. I'll need to watch that sometime. So, yes, so what actually would you say in your background, when you grew up, so to come to this actually realization and doing with your passion for social justice and
Mm.
challenging corporate norm, is there anything from your childhood that actually can inform that? Or is
Well,
something that you just develop over the time?
I would say it was kind of a cyclical uh journey, because as a child, I think a lot of kids, and you see this in politics and like Greta Thunberg, and like just the kids they got their generally they have their morals set straight. They're not corrupted by living in the real world as much. And they get it. My parents were immigrants. I saw numerous instances of discrimination against them.
Mm,
And it didn't make me bitter, but it made me
mm,
really aware
yeah.
of how society treats the more vulnerable categories
Mm,
of its population.
mhm,
And I would say I considered being an immigration lawyer, and props to all immigration lawyers out there, because that is a tough job. It
mhm,
is really can be very depressing,
mhm.
because convicts have more rights than immigrants in the US in a
Yeah,
lot of situations. I
yeah.
mean, not to say that convicts have a lot of rights. That's also another area of problematic oppression. But um, you know, that is but I actually realized I could not do that day in and day out. It was
Mm,
too much. It would have ground me down. I would have burnt out.
mm,
So I had enough self-preservation and self-awareness to know
mm,
that can't be it.
mm,
When I was at the big law firm, I did do pro bono work, VAWA, Violence Against Women Act, like pro bono cases and things like that. But I knew that I could not do immigration work all day. But
mm,
I always felt like this was something I knew and cared about. But my affinity was for this corporate work. I always really kind of just understood contracts, understand corporate structure. It just was easy for me. Like when I learned constitutional law, I was like, this is so confusing and made up, and like it feels tortuous, and just I don't know. There's no logic in my mind.
yeah,
Whereas for contracts, it kind of made sense to me, more
yeah,
logical.
yeah.
So I wanted to pair that logic, or rather that affinity for something that I'm good at,
Mm,
with a meaning. And I
yeah.
didn't realize I needed the meaning until pretty far on in my career, right? Like 13 years in,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like questioning, because I was at this boutique law firm. I was a partner. I'd been partner for 5 years. Everything on paper looked right,
Yeah.
but I wasn't
It's
happy.
no meaning. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And like you get slices of meaning in your day
Yeah,
occasionally, every now and then,
yeah.
but it didn't feel like my work was towards
Mm,
higher purpose.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And
That.
I didn't realize how much of a toll that lack of purpose was taking on me until I took the step to start this. And I explored other things. I interviewed, I was potentially looking at a clinical teaching job. You know, I was just looking because I knew that if on paper everything is right and I'm still this unhappy, something's wrong. I
Mm.
had to figure out something else. And I kind of did it by process of elimination and trying a
Yeah.
bunch of things.
Yeah.
Um, and then too, I started this law firm and I had mad imposter syndrome, right? I was like, oh my gosh,
Really? Why?
yeah,
You
I'm
come
gonna
from
encounter,
law.
I don't know. I don't know. Just because of social programming. Honestly, I have a very healthy ego. So if it's happening to me, it's happening to everyone. That's what I
Yes.
feel. And I was worried that I would encounter something I couldn't handle, or I was worried that if I hired people from my prior firm, that my firm would not survive, and then they would be out on the street and homeless, and I would be responsible for that. And it
Yes.
was like the dumbest logic. Like if you explained it to your friend or your friend explained that to you, you would be like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're really
Yeah.
smart. Like, why are
I
this
know.
makes no
Yeah.
sense.
We can go.
But for yourself, the
We can
objectivity is just
run
taken
those
out.
things in our heads for so, that don't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. I do think this is actually a really good piece of advice I've gotten is like talk to yourself the way you would talk to a friend. So like if a friend told you the things that you're saying in your mind or
Mm-hmm.
vice versa, like how would you respond?
Mm-hmm.
And having like maybe not even friend, maybe like a more junior person in your career.
Yeah.
If they came and told you these things, what would you tell them back?
Mm-hmm.
Write it down and then like say those words back to yourself.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like a lot of women and especially women of color decide, they want to help others. They're trying
Yes.
to help.
Yes.
But the self-critical lens is like, that's the only way I'm going to be good enough to like compete in this world and do all of this stuff. And it's like everyone's realizing that that self-critical lens holds you back.
Totally.
Um,
Totally, totally. I totally
yeah.
get that. Thank you for, reminding us about that because, in my own work also in personal branding, I actually do encounter quite a lot about those, self-talk. It often is ourself who are our worst and harshest critic because
Yeah,
outside
100%.
there, people are all giving you all the sign of success. What are you talking about? But in your own
Yeah.
head, it doesn't really make any sense. And actually, on that topic as well, on in peak, you also said about something that you encounter quite a lot in the communities. Also, can you tell me what are the common challenges that, in the community that you serve have, especially like women, they kind of, you just, some kind of, you know, imposter syndrome and all those kind of things. What are the things that usually are the common challenges that you face, that you see?
Yeah. And I'll have one note about imposter syndrome. This is not new view of it, but there's a tendency to blame ourselves for imposter syndrome as well. Imposter syndrome is something that you experience that is a social problem. It is a problem of society that people feel that way. It is not necessarily, it's not your fault. At the same time, like acknowledge, try to identify it, try to work past it. People have different approaches. I think talking to yourself like a friend, uh, literally just writing something down and doing a thought experiment of what would I say to a friend and reading that back or talking to friends because one of our strengths is in our community and network. So relying on those folks to help um, you determine the best, as advice and support. But
Communities.
in terms of mistakes people make, I also want to flag. Sorry, I just also want to flag that like women, this is like you see it everywhere. They will not try unless they're 110% qualified.
That's
And men will try when they are 60% qualified.
yeah, or even
So,
less.
and startups are a lot about messing around, failing, and figuring it out. Another area that I see people running up against, in particular underrepresented folks, is worrying about needing it kind of is hand in hand with failure, but like needing a warm intro to everyone. You don't need a warm intro to everyone. It sure helps. So do your research and try and identify who could be connected and connect you. But casting a broad net, approaching things not with a handout for money, but also often instead with a request for information that the person you're talking to specifically would have or has, domain expertise that would help you.
Mm.
That approach, um, and doing that broadly and doing that consistently, it's so powerful. It helps you make connections. It helps you let investors and strategic partners, even future strategic partners, know what you're doing. You can then use that to say, well, we were doing X. We actually accomplished X. Now we're on to Y. I have so it gives status updates. It shows that you can execute on what you set out to do. It's so powerful. And I would say the number one mistake that founders make is not paying attention to this network building component
Oh.
of startups with, and it applies to investors, it applies to future partners or acquirers, it applies to hires. Maybe you don't need that hire yet, but you need to figure out who's the best in the area so that when you are ready to hire, you have some folks ready. Because there's often a 6-month lag between when you want to hire someone for a very specific position and when you hire them. You can cut that down significantly if you're already looking even before you're ready. So it's this idea of investing the time and effort into establishing and creating connections and networks in a way that is authentic to you, that doesn't feel like work as much as possible, and that is a broad base. Because there are a lot of no's. Like some statistic was like 72 no's to 1 yes for a startup trying to get investment. That's a normal one, right? If we're talking about a woman, person of color, other underrepresented demographic, it's going to be even more. So you have, but that whole process is not worthless, right? Hopefully you're talking to people who are helping you improve the pitch, who are helping you connect to other investors who may be more receptive to what you're working on, who may be able to advise or make strategic connections. And just thinking of it all as a process, and that's something you really have to allocate time, like a retirement plan for your company. Every month you spend a couple hours focused on this work, and the dividends are so huge compared to another company that's just been nose to the grindstone, emerges with 6 months of runway. They can't get sold for love and money. They can't get an exit. They can't find an investor to give them more runway. It's tragic, and I've seen it happen a lot.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you mentioned this, Aravinda. Networking is the biggest actually um thing that a lot of women don't do strategically. And we've seen
Yeah.
that also in a lot of our programs in the past. This is like the biggest issue, actually. How would you advise? What are the steps? How can we break that down? Let's say that somebody really is not doing networking at all. Some people say that they will be shy. Some people say they hate networking because they are introvert, which I say that it has nothing to do with being introvert, but a lot of people say they are introvert. How can you break that down? So how can people really start to be consciously networking? Let's say that somebody has zero experience in networking. Let's break that
Yeah.
down. How can they start?
Well, I think item number one is to focus on finding a connection rather than selling something.
Yeah.
I feel like
Good.
instinctively, people don't like being sold to,
Um,
and instinctively, we don't really like selling unless we're an amazing salesperson. This is not the introvert having problems networking that we're talking about, right? So don't think of it as selling.
mhm,
Think of it as connecting and seeing if you can help. Because the best networking opportunities are where you're able to provide value, make a connection, give a piece of advice, and then people are grateful and they are happy to know you and they're happy to return the favor. So thinking of it in this way. The other thing is not all networking has to be in person, yelling at someone across a bar with expensive drinks or something. It doesn't have to be the worst version.
mhm.
You can find a way to network that is more suited to things you're interested in. And also, like, I actually think LinkedIn's a great resource. I use it myself to reach out to people who might be thought leaders or If I can get an intro, that's great. But a lot of people are more receptive to connecting with others on LinkedIn. Other social media too. I find social media kind of toxic, so I'm not on all the other ones that much. Um, but connecting and then finding events. If you do go to an event, find an event that's actually interesting to you. Go with a friend, go with a colleague, and make a game of meeting at least two or three other people that aren't your colleagues, so you don't go there and just talk to your colleague the whole time. Um,
Hide
you know,
behind your colleagues. Yeah.
hide behind your colleague, just sit in the corner, drink your drink, and like no, not talk to
Yeah.
anyone. That's all of the pain and none of the benefit, right?
Yeah.
So, and as you get, and it really is practice makes perfect in that if you do it more and more, our lizard brains knew that in olden days, if we were shamed, we could be expelled from the community and we could die.
Mm,
Okay. So our lizard brain is still thinking that that feeling of embarrassment or shame or exposure could lead to our death.
mm,
I don't know of anybody who has recently died from embarrassment, but our brains think that is possible. And
mm,
so it's trying to protect us. And that's where all these feelings are coming from. And
mm,
just like when you go to the doctor and the shot is going to hurt, but you still take the shot because it's better than the alternative,
mm,
you can learn to acknowledge these feelings as like sensations in your body that have a good reason, like historically and evolutionarily, but that don't necessarily need to dictate your behavior on a day-to-day basis. And to figure out ways to make it more fun. And the more you do it, the more your body realizes, oh, I survived that. I didn't die. It's okay. And you kind of rewire your system a little bit to
exactly.
understand that these activities can be not just not painful, but actually kind of enjoyable,
Yeah.
especially in our society where people are feeling more disconnected than ever. There's a lack of community. If you go to an event and you meet a new friend, it's like a rush. It
Mm.
feels great. And I guarantee if that happens, you'll be so much happier that you did that than like Netflix and chilled at home.
Yeah, totally. And I also even going to add that it's like a new skills actually, as a skill as an entrepreneur or as a professional, this is a must-have skill. When you think of it, like this is a skill that can really open up, opportunity to me. I don't have to go and, when I need someone, go and really quickly find somebody, but actually build that. It's like a bank account, I'll say, start saving, start
Retirement
building
fund,
some
bank account.
credit,
Absolutely.
and then when you
Yeah.
need that, and again, I love what you said earlier, look at it as giving values. It's not about going and selling your product or service or anything, but building value, add value, and then whenever obviously something happened, somebody's going to think about you, right? So I love that. I really love that. I think that networking is one of the key skills today, is to open doors no matter where you are, whether you are a professional, an entrepreneur, and regardless which country you are in. That's the key, actually. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Did you have any mentor yourself or somebody who has, you know, given you some tips as you were going, um, of what you need to do, or do you have to
And,
figure the
I
whole
had a
thing by
few,
yourself?
well, yeah. So I had a few people, but the challenge was at the big law firm, there were some Asian women that are more senior that I really liked and that kept an eye out for me.
Mm,
They all left. None of them made partner
okay.
because that's the structure of a big law firm. I don't know. Um, one of the folks broke both of her wrists in a skiing injury.
Mm,
She still billed the minimum, but they were like, well, your billables could have been higher. We're not going to make you partner this year, even though we said, you've got it. I mean, I don't know. I, but there were men that were trying to look out for me and giving me advice. The challenge was that what worked for them didn't work for me,
mm,
right? I wore khakis and a button down. I looked like a clown. Okay. I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't look right. It was the uniform for startup lawyers and it didn't fit me. So I had to figure out how to just be myself and be really good at what I do and transmit that somehow, like convey that I'm comfortable in my skin and I'm comfortable with what I do. I'm very I'm very skilled. I have a great amount of experience and I love doing this work, and just transmit that in a passive way versus the means that worked for other, like I tried to learn golf. A, I'm not that interested in it. B, nobody's inviting me to a golf tournament, So it's just like what works for them may not work for you. You got to find your own path, but you can find other people, right? That are doing something different. Like pay attention to the folks that are doing it differently, and the folks that are happy, that feel like, they're onto something. And again, that may not work for you either. Whatever is working for them may not work for you. But I think it is a process of trial and error, and really being open to what feels good, what feels authentic, what works, keeping track of, well, when I did this one game at this event, I actually met two more people and I felt good about it afterwards. When I played this game with myself about, the other thing too is trying to reach out, and in the vein of like women are helpers and we're more comfortable helping than tooting our own horn for sure.
Mhm.
If you find somebody at an event that is not talking to anyone, go and talk to them,
Mm.
because that's a boon that you're giving them, and you're meeting somebody that other people aren't meeting.
Yeah,
So it's a
exactly.
small,
That's a very good one. Yeah.
it's a resource that they may not have. So I'm full of unsolicited advice. That's how I do.
No, I love that. I love those tips actually, especially there's always one or two who are also, squiggling in their own corner there, who are also, don't want to go and I talk to other people. You can always spot those at networking events. So now let's talk about the 3M, Ravinda.
Yeah.
This
Mhm.
podcast is all about, meaningful work, meaningful life. And I have 3 M's: meaning, money, and movement. The first one, meaning. So what gives you meaning in life? So where do you get your inspiration from?
Yeah. So, I came to it. It is part of the mission of my firm, is part of what gives me meaning and gives my work meaning. And also, by the way, in establishing a purpose driven law firm, which is very unusual, I have managed to attract an amazing team. They could work anywhere. They're so good. Turns out it's 9 women and 1 man. So
Ooh,
think of that what you
wow.
will. I swear I did not have a gender quota. Um, and the team that I've established. So what I definitely made this decision in an altruistic vein. And I feel like I've been one of the greatest recipients of the benefits, because I just feel so much happier and better in the work I do every day. I love the team I'm surrounded with. I love the clients. They love us back.
Awesome.
And, you know, I probably work way more than I do work way more than I did. Like if we talk about straight hours,
Mhm.
than I did at the prior firm, but it feels a lot lighter. It feels easy. It feels fun. It feels engaging. I'm in flow sometimes.
Mhm.
And that is not something I experienced very often
Mhm.
before. So
Mhm.
I think that the mission is really trying to allow uh, remove one of the barriers to competent, nay, supportive legal counsel that many founders and investors who are not sort of in the network already don't have access to that. And so by doing that, hopefully we encourage and support them to be successful. And then they are out in the tech world talking some sense, like saying what the rest of us want to say, agitating towards changes and movement that is beneficial to everyone and not just one specific type of person.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so now let's talk about money. So, I'm a very generous person, and I have 1 billion pound UK pound, which is a little bit more than 1 billion 3 4 dollars.
Mhm.
To give you today, what would you do, and how would you spend your days?
Um, that's such a good question. I think I would try to honestly, I would try to address homelessness as a nation crisis,
Um,
because it can't be done on a city per city basis, because people will send homeless people on a one-way ticket to the place that is doing the most has the most resources, and
mm,
then it's just, so it has to be nationwide. And there are experiments like in Utah,
mm,
they gave homeless people free housing,
mhm.
and they mostly stayed out of homelessness, and like that's all it took,
Oh,
so the way that people address that issue in this is not the answer that probably you're looking for in terms of equalizing access. But I just think when there's so much income inequity, there's just so much waste in terms of talent.
Mm,
If people are just worried about trying to like make it through the night, they can't contribute. They can't do anything amazing, even if they're an amazing person.
mm,
So I would try and have a nationwide approach to that, something like universal basic income, something that gives folks what they need without it being like too many requirements. If I have so much money, like let's just spread it out liberally,
mm.
and then supports them to continue in that vein. But in terms of the specific issue that we have, I think it's really just getting resources because the people are amazing. The people who are able to be successful despite all of the prejudice, the racism, the sexism, the headwinds, they're amazing. All they need is a little bit more support to continue being amazing
Yeah,
and win. And
yeah.
so I think it's really about connecting folks with the support that they need. There are a lot of cool accelerators. There are a lot of but there are also a lot of terrible ones. So you have to be careful that it actually does what it says it's going to do in exchange for big chunk of your company.
Mhm.
Um, there are a lot of programs and grants, but people don't know about it. So finding a way to connect the people with the resources they need the most.
Okay, that's awesome. Well spent. So now, how do you want to be remembered for, Aravinda?
Yeah, I mean, if I am able to make a difference in the success of a meaningful client of a one of these people I'm talking about that just is able to walk through walls and survive despite everything and allow them to thrive and make a difference in the world, that then I've done what I set out to do.
That's awesome. Okay, cool. So, knowing what you know now, what is your parting advice to anybody now looking to do meaningful work and live a meaningful life?
Do it now. Like, don't wait until you get a certain amount of money or you get those thresholds are they help you feel safe, but they don't propel you towards happiness. And my only regret when starting this firm is that I didn't do it sooner. I've been so happy over the past few years and I've achieved a lot. But if I had done it sooner, how much more of my life could I have been working on exactly what I wanted, building the team, working with more clients that need the service. So don't wait,
I love
is my
that.
advice.
Yes, live your best life now, which is the slogan of this podcast, actually.
Amazing.
How can
So,
people
so
reach you
appropriate.
and learn more about you and your work, Aravinda?
Yeah. So my law firm is called Venturous Counsel. VenturousCounsel. I know it's too many letters, guys. I get it. But it's like adventure, venturous, and then counsel, like legal counsel, .com. And that's our website, has a lot of information. We're also pretty active on LinkedIn doing events. We have an event in person on August 13th, kind of guiding people in starting their own startup. Like, what are the basics you need to know? We're doing that in partnership with Silicon Valley Bank and Clerky, which is an automated tool that I recommend to people to form their startup that plans to raise angel or VC investment. It's the only one where I don't have to fix everything. So I'm a big fan of it. And we do like female founder walks at Salesforce. So just add yourself to our newsletter, reach out. Um, and if you're interested in collaborating on any of these sorts of initiatives in building community, I'd be so open to that.
Wonderful. Is this going to be online or is on in presence, your events?
It's the event, these two events will be in person. We also have quite a few events on LinkedIn on InPeak community that you can watch that have already happened and then new ones that are scheduled. We're doing more events on LinkedIn that are virtual as well. And the local events are in San Francisco where I'm based,
Yeah.
although the firm is fully remote. But yeah, join up with our newsletter. We have like little videos on LinkedIn that explain some typical questions we get, trying to really democratize knowledge about this so that the best people can be successful.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. My gosh. Thank you so much, Aravinda, for this really insightful conversation and all the gems that you dropped and your work as well. All the work you're doing. Thank you so much for that. Did you like this conversation? What was a key takeaway about this episode? So let me know in the comment below and make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and YouTube so you don't miss any episodes. And to hear more incredible stories and get the show notes and other free resources, visit francinebeley.com/podcast. That's Francinebeley.com/podcast. And I'll see you next week for another episode of Meaningful Work, Meaningful Life podcast. Until then, dream, act, and make an impact. Lots of love.